Level 20 required just to enter? What kind of garbage system rule is this? As expected, the dragons here were absolute nightmares. Spewing infernos, leaving zero chance of escape. With no way out, Minryu decided to risk it all in a head-on clash. But wait, was he possessed by the bald cape hero? With just one casual punch, he blasted the beast 18,000 miles away. The majestic dragon, named 𝒕𝒂𝒕🔂, was originally the beloved pet of the royal prince. But one fateful day, it accidentally dropped the royal heir, resulting in a brutal execution order. Relying on its sheer monstrous power, it barely escaped. Since then, it became a hunted fugitive, desperately begging the main character for salvation. But Minryu coldly ignored the giant lizard's cries, focusing instead on extracting critical lore about this chaotic realm. He discovered that the 𝒕��💔 continent was forged a mere 40 years ago. Humanity was living in perfect harmony, until an alien demon race descended from the heavens. These invaders forged unholy pacts with the abyss, dragging the entire population of Earth into this death game. Their twisted goal? Slaughter everyone to power level. Fortunately, 6 divine goddesses intervened, forcing a fragile balance of power across the lands. Ding! A blue holographic window suddenly materialized. The new quest was absolute madness. Assassinate one of the 6 goddesses. The ultimate reward? A one-way ticket back to Earth, plus 3 omnipotent wishes. Seeking answers, Minryu ventured straight into the city's hunter guild. The moment he stepped through the grand doors, gasps echoed through the hall. His ridiculously shredded physique had every veteran hunter sweating. They assumed he was a legendary powerhouse. But the mana reading crystal shattered their illusions. Level 5. Absolute trash tier. The entire guild erupted into mocking laughter. Yet, amidst the sea of arrogant fools, one veteran saw through the disguise. The guildmaster, Bugger, a massive level 25 vanguard, offered him a spot. He was a local legend in the monster-infested city of 𝒕𝒂𝒕💔. Next up was Amber, a deadly level 21 shadow assassin. Surprisingly, she acted more like the party's overprotective mother, constantly fussing over everyone's vital stats. Then came the captain's little sister, Hela, a level 16 saintess with miraculous healing magic. Rounding out the squad was the explosive mage, 𝒕𝒂𝒕🔂. Together, they formed an insanely flawless monster hunting syndicate. But their perfect synergy left Minryu feeling like an absolute ghost. His only epic quest? Playing the ultimate pack mule for their massive loot drops. Even though he was constantly left in the dust while they unleashed flashy combo attacks, they still fairly split the gold. But the dark truth behind his pacifism? It wasn't cowardice. These dungeon creeps were simply too pathetic. To Minryu's overwhelming hidden stats, crushing them yielded exactly 0 experience points. He wept tears of utter frustration. Was he cursed to be? Hard stuck at level 5 for eternity? Refusing to accept this insulting reality, Minryu charged into the wilderness on a mad hunt for boss-tier prey. But his terrifying aura kept them away, leaving only whimpering wild mutts in his wake. Remembering the exiled dragon's words, 𝒕𝒂𝒕🔂 had warned him that he was the apex predator of this entire zone. The crushing realization finally hit him. The beast wasn't flattering him. It was stating a tragic fact. There was no glory in being an over-leveled god among insects. Suddenly, the blood-curdling howl of an alpha wolf shattered the silence. Adrenaline pumping, Minryu dashed toward the battle zone, only to be blinded by a wildly provocative, completely naked, muscular male figure glistening in the moonlight. Panic struck our stoic hero. He immediately bowed in frantic apology, desperately plotting his tactical retreat. But the nudist gladiator wasn't having it. Desperate to interrogate this weirdo for quest intel, a chaotic grappling match ensued. Unfortunately, this highly compromising physical entanglement was witnessed by a passing hunter. "Unhand that pure maiden, you bald degenerate!" the heroic bystander roared, charging in blind rage. "Bro, you've got it all wrong," Minryu screamed, begging the naked musclehead to equip some damn armor. Knowing his immense strength could vaporize the man, Minryu tried to humbly bow out. But in his panicked dodge, his fist accidentally connected with the aggressor's absolute lowest weak point. A soul-shattering shriek tore through the very fabric of reality. Even the gods above winced in sympathetic agony. Let us all press F to pay our absolute deepest respects. Fast forward, and our guilt-ridden main character was slumped outside the emergency healing ward. He understood the supreme martial philosophy. Every man is born with a sacred binary constellation, and he had permanently obliterated that perfect cosmic balance. The high priests cast their strongest divine arts, pulling the victim back from death's door. But the man's hollow, traumatized gaze screamed a truth far worse than the grave. 3 agonizing months passed. When Guildmaster Bugger finally declared the grand expedition, it was time to raid the abyss. The targets? Level 30+ dimensional horrors. Legends whispered that these twisted labyrinth cores held supreme cosmic artifacts bridging multiple realities. Even crazier, rumors spoke of divine elixirs capable of instantly regenerating missing limbs, or even defying the laws of death itself. Driven by the desperate need to grind his level, Minryu slipped away under the cover of darkness. But an abyssal nightmare had already breached the surface. Ding! The red warning flared. Target identified. Level 31 armored beast, boasting absolutely impenetrable diamond-tier defense. Minryu simply sighed, flicking his wrist. A single crescent shockwave cleanly bisected the unstoppable titan. This trash system is full of lies, he grumbled, feeling completely scammed. While novice hunters were screaming and abandoning their gear in pure terror, Minryu casually strolled through the carnage, throwing effortless wind slashes. Can't let the juicy experience points get away, he muttered, his eyes glowing with the hunger of a true gamer. He intentionally dropped his guard, pretending to struggle so the others would fight alongside him. But the cowards actually abandoned him and ran. Shouldn't have bothered saving them, he scoffed. Suddenly, a massive stampede of horrific beasts surged forward, sending a random mob into sheer panic. But look closer. The demonic horde wasn't attacking. They were sprinting for their miserable lives, eyes wide with primal terror. The monsters barked at each other to split the loot and evacuate immediately. Am I hallucinating right now? The mob gasped. Deeper into the abyss, the cavern was literally painted with high-tier monster corpses. It was entirely the main character's masterpiece. A single lazy flick of his blade had sent armored behemoths flying like ragdolls. He was so incredibly sick of suppressing his devastating aura. If he accidentally put even 1% of his true power into a strike, the entire cavern would collapse. They hyped these dungeons up way too much. The outside lore is absolute garbage. After relentlessly bullying the fleeing horde, he finally spotted a glowing anomaly. Oh? Is the game finally getting good? A supreme glowing artifact hovered gracefully in the ruins. But why was the drop rate so laughably easy? Little did he know, it had dropped from the level 40 Abyssal Demon King that he had accidentally atomized with a stray shockwave earlier. Wait a minute, his gamer instincts flared. If I loot the dungeon core, the spawn rate drops to 0. My sweet experience farm will vanish. Whatever, I'll just clear out another zone. He snatched the glittering prize. Slipping the mystical ring onto his finger, he dropped into a legendary martial stance and roared. Kamehameha. Absolute silence. I totally nailed the hand signs. Where's my apocalyptic fireball? Ding! The holographic interface mocked him. Level 35 required. Are you kidding me? This legendary gear is totally useless. For a god-tier level 5 like me, I guess I'll just pawn it off at the underworld auction. Boom! A massive earthquake suddenly shook the bedrock. The core's removal triggered a spatial collapse, but instead of burying him alive, the tectonic shift revealed a secret underground labyrinth. Minryu's eyes sparkled with manic joy. A hidden boss room? Finally, let's speedrun this and go home. Yet reality struck him with a cruel debuff. The secret vault was completely, utterly empty. Frustrated, he threatened to steal the dungeon core and render the local monsters officially homeless. Swish! A massive, grotesque tentacle violently lashed out, binding his limbs in a vice grip. Looming from the shadows was the true nightmare, a level 45 abyssal boss. Minryu smirked, ready to harvest its juicy experience points. But before he could unleash his absolute devastation, the heavy vault doors blew open. That random, terrified mob burst onto the scene, flooding Minryu with unexpected guilt. Instead of running, the fool started running his mouth. You are the most arrogant brat among the level 5 rookies. You want a solo match? Fine, I will not hold back anymore. Step into the arena if you dare. He was just trash-talking, but to his shock, the fool actually charged in. The attack was aimed straight for his head. Fortunately, Minryu leaped up and dodged with perfect timing, but his jump sent him crashing right into the floating boss monster. Good thing he avoided the attack. Otherwise, his trusty baseball bat would have been ruined. Honestly, this dungeon boss was pathetically weak. Just a tiny bump and it collapsed. throwing a tantrum like a baby. Meanwhile, blinded by revenge, the one-bald rookie completely dropped his guard. A monster grabbed him and took total control. In a twist of fate, the one-bald guy finally got a second ball. Though this new addition was way too massive. Sure, the boss itself was incredibly frail, but its true power lay in parasitic possession. It hijacked bodies, turning weak humans into terrifying demonic beasts. Sounds like a legendary threat, right? Well, not exactly, because our hidden, overpowered main character, Minryu, had already wiped the floor with them. He was casually strolling out of the dungeon. But first, a quick system check. A system prompt revealed he had gained over 100,000 experience points. Before he could even celebrate, reality hit him like a truck. A system window revealed he needed over 1 billion more experience points just to reach level 6. For the rest of the day, Minryu looked completely lifeless. His brain was stuck in an endless loop. 1 billion divided by 100,000. How long would this nightmare grind take? 1 week later, the Burman Guild squad was still desperately searching, but they could not find a single active dungeon. Why? Because our sneaky protagonist was secretly speed clearing every dungeon at night. Thanks to his shadow clearing, the team's journey progressed way faster than expected. Their next destination was the prosperous city of Johto, but trouble found them immediately at the city gates. A strict inspection was underway. Someone had stolen a dungeon core, and the authorities claimed it caused massive losses for the Hunter Association. An infamous heresy inquisitor was arriving to execute the culprit. According to their flawed intelligence, the suspect was simply anyone over 18 years old. Hearing this, Minryu was absolutely baffled. What kind of absurd, meaningless standard was that? Whatever. It had nothing to do with them. For now, they just needed to sell their loot and throw a massive feast. It was time to celebrate Minryu's first successful mission. His heart felt genuinely warm. He never expected to find a guild that felt like a true family in this strange, unforgiving world. However, their loot-selling plan hit a massive wall. Because of the missing dungeon cores, the authorities were cracking down hard. Not a single merchant dared to buy monster drops. Right at that moment, the terrifying heresy inquisitor appeared. This guy was no joke. Even with his maxed-out stats, Minryu could not read the man's level or system information. The inquisitor was frighteningly sharp. He instantly noticed the relic Minryu was trying to sell was a dungeon core, but instead of attacking, the inquisitor stayed perfectly calm. He began to tell a dark tale. 15 years ago, a mighty hunter left his family to join a monster hunting guild. He was an absolute beast in combat, but nobody trusted him. Why? Because he was an outsider from another world. One day, they faced an overwhelmingly powerful boss monster. The heroic hunter chose to stay behind as a meat shield so his team could escape. Who do you think died that day? The twisted answer: the guild leaders and the corrupt world. Every single coward who fled the dungeon was executed for abandoning their comrade and framing him. The man from another world miraculously survived and returned home, but tragedy was waiting for him. His beloved family had been brutally murdered. In that moment of absolute despair, he swore to slaughter everything in this world. That is why awakeners from other worlds always face a tragically cursed fate. However, if you share that same cursed origin, I will grant you salvation with my holy power. Minryu's aura immediately exploded as he prepared to attack. He took that as a direct death threat against himself and against his precious Burman Guild family. But right as the tension reached a boiling point, a figure dashed onto the scene. It was the legendary naked guy from the other day. He arrived just in time to stop a bloodbath. Sevilla loudly claimed that Minryu was a member of his own guild on official business, but that weak lie could never fool an elite heresy inquisitor. With one simple question, he exposed their deception. The inquisitor began gathering a lethal amount of mana to annihilate them both. Suddenly, at the city gates, a massive cheer erupted. It was the one-bald rookie, swaggering into the city with insane arrogance. He genuinely believed he had slain the boss monster with his own hands. He was proudly bragging to everyone, expecting a grand reward. Instead, the guards instantly grabbed him by the collar and dragged him to the interrogation room. "I did not even do anything," he cried. With the fake culprit caught, the inquisitor apologized for his extreme rudeness. He even promised to buy all their relics at a premium price. But right before leaving, he secretly slipped Minryu a mysterious note. From that moment on, Minryu's face grew terrifyingly dark. His grim expression made Sevilla incredibly anxious. Minryu decided to hand all the relic money over to Sevilla. He asked him to deliver it to the Burman Guild, along with his hidden guild badge. It was a silent goodbye. He was never going back. He realized that staying with them would only bring fatal danger to the guild. He had truly considered them his family. Filled with sudden, overwhelming rage, he lost control and punched the car parked in front of him. The steel chassis crumpled like paper, terrifying the onlookers. Unfortunately, that car belonged to a notorious gang of thugs. They glared at him, with absolute confusion. They kidnapped him and spent a whole day punching him. But they ended up breaking their own hands while Minryu did not even flinch. They dragged him to their hideout to continue the torment. But shockingly, the gang boss had an eye for hidden talent. He instantly recruited Minryu as his newest enforcer. The gang's daily routine was brutally simple. They completely ignored the tragic cries of the poor and heartlessly cleared out all their belongings. Once the area was prepped, it was Minryu's turn to shine. He wielded a massive hammer made of a giant boulder strapped to a sturdy pole. The sheer oppressive aura of his stance made everyone freeze in fear. With a single, devastating swing, he obliterated the ruined house. It was the only shelter that poor farming family had left. The farming family stared blankly at the scene before them. But right there, standing in the rubble, was a beautiful, freshly built house. It completely replaced their old, crumbling shack. "This is your new home, valued clients. We are taking over the renovation project, promoted by the Hunter Association. We will also be repairing the city walls." But the family could not even process the sales pitch. Their minds were completely blown by this miraculous gift. Fast forward 5 months. Minryu had been working his construction job flawlessly. But today, he received a very special guest. It was 𝒕💂💕🔥. Minryu was absolutely stunned. He always kept his face hidden, so how was his identity exposed? He completely forgot that with his monstrously buff physique, no piece of cloth could hide him. The gang boss noticed Minryu's terrified expression. He immediately questioned the relationship between the two men. 𝒕💂💕🔥 dramatically recounted their epic saga. He started from their fateful encounter in the monster forest, when he was completely naked. Then, he detailed his desperate months-long journey to find him. The core story was actually completely innocent. But coming out of 𝒕💂💕🔥's mouth, it sounded wildly romantic. He made Minryu sound like a legendary heartbreaker. Despite Minryu screaming and pleading his innocence, the old boss swiftly kicked the scumbag right out the window. He ordered Minryu to reflect on his sins and compensate this pure young man for ruining his innocence. Finally, 𝒕💂💕🔥 revealed his true motive. He wanted Minryu to return to the path of a hunter. "Our new quest is to explore the Iron Forest and gather vital samples. There is zero danger, so do not worry. If anything happens, I will protect you with my life." Minryu carried a mountain of gear on his back. As he followed 𝒕💂💕🔥, he could not help but ask, why, out of everyone, did he choose him as a companion? After all, it had been ages since he left the guild. Just as I stepped outside, a bizarre little demon crawled out. It looked cute, sure, but this fearless blob even dared to nip at Minryu. However, he couldn't bring himself to chase it away. It had been ages since anyone, or anything, clung to him like this. But then, 𝒕💂💕🔥 blasted it into absolute oblivion. Before Minryu could even beg to keep it as a pet, the deed was done. True to his word, 𝒕💂💕🔥 rushed over in sheer panic. He frantically purified Minryu, warning about the creature's deadly poison. From the very beginning of this quest, Minryu thought 𝒕💂💕🔥 wanted live specimens. But how can you run tests on a pile of ash? Despite the misunderstanding, their expedition pressed onward. 𝒕💂💕🔥's solution to everything? Burn it all to the ground. In mere moments, the forest was blazing at a scorching 80 degrees Celsius. He claimed this inferno was absolutely necessary to ward off threats. "Don't worry," he said with a straight face. "These flames will naturally die out in just a few years." Wait, a few years? 𝒕💂💕🔥 then confessed this was only his second real combat mission. No wonder he was so incredibly tense. Usually, he just hired mercenaries to gather his research materials. In this world, mages level up their magic through deep academic study. Actual combat experience rarely boosts their stats. "I didn't earn my dragon rank badge through fighting," 𝒕💂💕🔥 admitted. "I got it because I'm currently raising a real dragon." But he couldn't let it out right now. Hearing this, Minryu's gamer instincts flared to life. His eyes widened in absolute shock. If he could bait 𝒕💂💕🔥 into summoning that dragon, killing it would yield a massive amount of experience points. Playing along, Minryu revealed he also knew a tiny dragon once, an incredibly rare and elusive beast. "I think it was just terrified," he murmured. wandering the boundless sky with its massive wings. It could breathe an endless storm of magical flames. But the real reason these majestic creatures lived in fear wasn't human hunters. It wasn't the constant threat of being tracked down. It was the crushing weight of absolute loneliness, with no one to share their eternal lives. That night, they stumbled upon a village overrun by bloodthirsty monsters. Without hesitating, 𝒕�𝒕🔂 charged in like a madman. He was determined to solo the entire horde. Minryu couldn't even get a single word of warning out. Unleashing his full magical arsenal, 𝒕💂💂 obliterated the monster den. In the blink of an eye, the massacre was over. Meanwhile, the main character's sharp eyes noticed something else. Hunter association marks were everywhere, but there were no corpses. His system logic immediately kicked in. This could only mean one thing: a hidden dungeon. They quickly tracked down the source. Sure enough, a secret portal rested inside a nearby abandoned well. But before they could even step foot inside the gate, a bone-chilling aura violently swept over them. A terrifying skull demon materialized right before their eyes. This menacing undead belonged to the elite level 72 monster class. And worse, it possessed the absolute nightmare trait: immortality. It lacked a nose, but its senses were sharper than a bloodhound. It instantly locked onto 𝒕💂💂's blazing fire mana. Slowly, the undead abomination reached into its robes. It pulled out a gruesome, preserved eyeball, shoving the eye into its empty socket. The monster glared at them. Legend says this was the actual eye of its long-dead bride. The demon's corrupted ice magic was overwhelmingly oppressive. It effortlessly snuffed out every single one of 𝒕💂💂's fire strikes. Realizing he was completely outmatched, 𝒕💂💂 made a desperate choice. He tried to bind the monster, buying precious seconds for their escape. But after running for what felt like miles, reality struck them hard. They hadn't escaped at all. The demon had already trapped them inside a massive, inescapable ice prison. The demonic frost was so absolute, it was literally freezing 𝒕💂💂's burning fire mana. Thanks to his maxed-out hidden stats, Minryu didn't even feel the cold. But his companion was a completely different story. 𝒕💂💂's internal organs were shutting down from the frostbite. As 𝒕💂💂 collapsed to his knees, Minryu prepared to make his move. But the stubborn mage held him back. He had sworn an oath to protect his comrade at all costs. In a reckless gamble, 𝒕💂💂 grabbed a raw mana stone. He stabbed it directly into his own chest, setting his body ablaze. This suicidal move barely kept his core temperature from hitting 0. Bleeding and burning, 𝒕💂💂 refused to give up. He resolved to blast Minryu out of this frozen hell. Marching straight toward the immortal abomination, he readied his final attack. He gathered his last remaining mana stones. Hurling them at the frozen walls, he triggered a massive chain reaction. Explosions rocked the cavern, violently blowing a hole through the solid ice. The blast caused absolute chaos in the atmospheric mana. Blending multiple magic types together, the shockwave's destructive power multiplied exponentially. The skeleton demon actually marveled at the human mage's sheer tactical brilliance, but the monster failed to notice the colossal shadow looming behind it. A massive dragon's jaw snapped down toward the undead. 𝒕💂💂 hadn't just summoned a beast. The mage himself had transformed into a glorious, terrifying dragon. Even our overpowered main character was caught completely off guard. This explained everything. This was the true source of his limitless, roaring fire mana. In his majestic draconic form, 𝒕💂💂 tanked the zombie's vicious assault. With a mighty sweep, he sent the undead creature flying across the cavern. Unleashing a torrent of blazing heat, he tried to melt the prison. But the cursed ice refused to yield. The dragon realized brute force wasn't enough to escape. The only way out was to completely obliterate the dungeon boss. Condensing his high-temperature mana, 𝒕💂💂 fired a devastating magical bullet. The scorching projectile rocketed straight toward the demon's skull. But they were fighting inside the monster's absolute territory. Manipulating the ambient frost, the demon effortlessly slowed the attack down. The terrifying undead smoothly sidestepped the lethal blast. Now it was the skeleton's turn to counterattack. It unleashed a relentless barrage of piercing ice missiles at the duo. Roaring in defiance, 𝒕💂💂 threw his massive body in the way. His draconic scales were shredded, soaking the ice in his blood. He was determined to keep his promise to the very end. He would shield Minryu until his final breath. Minryu watched the bloody spectacle, his hidden gamer mind racing. 𝒕💂💂 would literally fight to the death if he didn't intervene. There was only one option left: completely erase this arrogant demon. Growing bored of his prey, the undead boss decided to end the game. It conjured a colossal broadsword made of absolute zero ice. The weapon was designed to pierce straight through dragon scales. Suddenly, the battle's dynamic violently shifted. A tiny, seemingly insignificant human shadow bolted past the bleeding dragon. Minryu charged headfirst toward the apocalyptic ice sword. The arrogant demon boss sneered at the pathetic sight. A trash-tier level 5 newbie daring to face an immortal? The monster threw its head back in cruel, mocking laughter. But that laughter instantly choked in its skeletal throat. Minryu's fist connected with the divine-tier ice weapon. The sheer kinetic impact was absolutely reality-breaking. It didn't just shatter the massive broadsword into glittering dust. The shockwave ripped through the entire indestructible ice prison. The domain shattered like cheap glass in a catastrophic explosion. The bleeding dragon stared in absolute, mind-numbing disbelief. Every single sacrifice he made today was completely pointless. And the craziest part? Minryu hadn't even used a fraction of his true maximum stats. Who was the real monster here? Snapping out of his shock, 𝒕💂 furiously roared at his companion. Why the hell did you hide your absolute power? Minryu just shrugged. 𝒕💂 was the one who kept hogging the fights. While they bickered, the shattered bone dust began to violently swirl. The undead boss wasn't dead yet. Countless grotesque tentacles erupted from the ground, binding both of them. The dark magic rapidly drained the exhausted dragon's remaining life force. The demon gloated from the shadows. These vines will never release their grip until the prey is completely drained. Even if I command them to stop, they will keep crushing your bones. Your bodies will be ground into absolute nothingness. Before the boss could finish its villainous monologue, Minryu simply flexed his muscles. The unbreakable demonic tentacles instantly violently snapped like wet noodles. The skeleton demon froze, its empty eye sockets wide with sheer terror. In a flash, Minryu teleported right into its face, blade drawn. Any last words before I delete your character? Minryu asked coldly. Trembling, the undead boss finally revealed its hidden lore. This monster was actually a reincarnated human from Earth. Through relentless dark research and a demonic pact, he had acquired this indestructible, immortal vessel. Back on Earth, he was just a nameless, pathetic loser. But in this fantasy world, he swore to conquer death itself. He wanted to live a glorious second life without a single regret. Minryu's previous devastating punch had obliterated him. But thanks to his cheat skill, his bones automatically reassembled themselves. However, facing the overwhelming godlike aura of this main character, all of his arrogant ambitions completely crumbled. The immortal demon desperately tried to activate its escape magic. But against a max-level anomaly, escape was mathematically impossible. The predator had officially become the helpless prey. The monster hysterically wailed and begged for mercy. Screaming pathetic apologies, he pretended to hold back. We are both from Earth, he claimed, trying to play the sympathy card. But it was all a cheap distraction. In the shadows, the enemy had already made their move. A towering ice knight materialized, charging straight at Minryu. But just like before, our overpowered main character didn't even flinch. With a casual flick of his wrist, his blade cleaved the frozen warrior perfectly in half. The momentum didn't stop there. The strike shattered the demon's proud golden teeth, sending it flying across the battlefield. Yet, the monstrous undead kept regenerating. There has to be a hidden mechanic here, Minryu thought. Since he couldn't find its weak point yet, he chose violence. He unleashed a relentless barrage of attacks, making the creature scream and beg for its life. In a desperate final move, the demon compressed a massive amount of mana. Summoning a colossal ice cannon, it fired a freezing blast at them, but Minryu deflected the catastrophic energy with a yawn. He was getting seriously bored. Wasting time on an immortal demon wasn't his style. Let's see you regenerate when I grind you down to the molecular level. He decided to test this theory on the demon's bony leg. Pressing his blade against the skeleton, a shower of brilliant sparks erupted. But instead of screaming in agony, the weird demon actually moaned in absolute pleasure. It was thoroughly enjoying the friction. Disgusted but determined, Minryu applied maximum force, blending ear-piercing metal screeches with the monster's satisfied giggles. Meanwhile, 𝒕💂 finally returned to his human form by chugging a mana potion. Shivering in the cold, the dragon descendant really wished he had magically stretching clothes to survive these awkward transformations. The bizarre demon still wasn't completely dead, but Minryu had thoroughly locked it down. Escape was impossible. After completely submitting to the overwhelming stats, the creature stopped moving and suddenly spat out a mysterious coin. Minryu's eyes widened. It was the exact same item the judge had given him. What was the hidden lore behind this drop? He pocketed the enigma as the days rolled by. Under Minryu's surprisingly careful watch, 𝒕�𝒕� slowly regained his strength. The time for secrets was over. Minryu finally revealed his true identity. He wasn't from this dimension at all, but an anomaly from another world. My ultimate main quest is to hunt down a goddess, he declared. Only then can I return home. Hearing this insane objective, 𝒕�𝒕🔄 knew he couldn't stop this overpowered anomaly. Instead, 𝒕�𝒕🔄 shared his own lore. He was one of 4 dragon descendants created by the great goddess, bound by destiny to survive and return. As night fell, Minryu geared up for his epic journey. He received a world map and essential survival gear from the mysterious boss. The old man gave one final, heavy warning. Never slaughter the innocent. Cross that line, and you become the very monsters you hunt. With wishes for a safe raid, the journey began. After 2 grueling days and nights of relentless travel, Minryu finally broke through the tree line. The legendary 2-tier city loomed in the distance. He wasn't a solo player right now. He had captured a local bandit to act as his navigator. Thanks to this squishy guide, Minryu learned the server lore. This place was actually known as the Dungeon City. It was literally built right on top of a colossal monster den. Drawn by the endless supply of beast drops, hunters flocked here daily. Because of this chaos, the border security was unbelievably strict. Seeing Minryu distracted by the customs check, the wanted bandit saw his chance. He bolted toward the forest, knowing the guards would execute him on sight. He smiled, thinking he had escaped the overpowered monster. But reality hit him like a truck. Minryu was already standing right in front of him, his speed defying all game logic. The bandit fell to his knees, weeping and begging for mercy from the hidden boss. Please, getting caught here is worse than hell. He revealed that at the valley's end sat a brutal concentration camp. Northern criminals and rogue hunters were forced into endless hard labor. Worse yet, the area was flooded with a demonic virus that turned prisoners into bloodthirsty fiends. Even outlanders and dimension travelers were being chained up, though the ones with god-tier stats easily crushed the local army. Hearing this grim world-building, Minryu felt a rare ping of pity. He decided to spare the pathetic mob. He casually tossed a heavy pouch at the bandit, paying him for his forced escort quest. "Wash your hands of this criminal life," Minryu declared like a true protagonist. "Start a new business with this gold. Build a bright future." Tears of joy streaming down his face, the bandit grabbed the pouch and sprinted away. Vowing to become an upstanding citizen, Minryu struck a cool pose, feeling like a total badass. But his smirk quickly vanished. He checked his inventory and realized a fatal error. The bag of gold was still in his hand. He had accidentally thrown his personal ID documents to the thief. Now he was an undocumented illegal alien. Paranoia set in as he snuck through the streets. Suddenly, he spotted a familiar pretty face. 𝒕🂃🔂 had made it into the city. Moving at blinding speed, Minryu scooped 𝒕🂃🔂 up over his shoulder and bolted like a madman. Soon, they were safely hidden inside a rental house. But then, Minryu saw something impossible for this primitive fantasy world. A magical, working refrigerator. His eyes practically sparkled with modern nostalgia. Ever since grinding in those barren mountains, he had been craving an icy beverage. Finally, salvation was right in front of him. Sweet, glorious ice water will be mine. Unable to control his excitement, he yanked at the divine appliance's handle. But no matter how much insane brute strength he used, the door refused to budge. Suddenly, a glowing blue screen popped up. "System alert! Level 11 required to interact with this item." Minryu exploded in pure rage. "Are you kidding me? A level cap just to open a fridge? What kind of trash-tier system is this? This game balance is completely garbage," he roared. 𝒕🂃🔂's sweat dropped, trying to calm the overpowered hero. He explained that magical tools require a minimum stat threshold, but the Dragon Boy was stunned when Minryu argued back. On Earth, even a level 1 toddler can use a fridge. Realizing their cultural differences, 𝒕🂃🔂 sighed. But then, a brilliant idea sparked in his mind. He knew the perfect grinding spot to bypass this ridiculous level lock. "We can't use cheat codes," 𝒕🂃🔂 smiled. "But we can certainly power level you through the system." Their destination was the Hunters Association. The lobby was completely packed, with newbies seeking guild registration. Stepping up to the plate, 𝒕🂃🔂 flawlessly cleared the evaluation. The crystal flared, revealing an impressive level 37. The female receptionist blushed furiously, completely captivated by the handsome Dragon Boy. Meanwhile, the receptionist next to her was terrified. She was dealing with a terrifying, half-naked barbarian. Minryu stood there radiating killing intent, wearing absolutely zero armor. looking like a complete lunatic. But little did the crowd know, this insane cosplay was their ultimate strategy. Trembling, the guild staff handed him a strength testing stone. Without blinking, Minryu crushed the magical artifact into fine dust with his bare hands. The entire guild hall gasped in shock. The max-level stats were leaking. Stepping in, 𝒕💂 proudly announced that his companion was a legendary 𝒕💂 tribesman. To understand this galaxy brain tactic, we must rewind to 24 hours ago. 𝒕💂 had drafted the ultimate disguise. When we hit the hero guild, drop the armor. Flexing your absolute unit of a body is the 𝒕💂 way. The 𝒕💂 were an obscure warrior minority from the desolate Far East Islands. By claiming this savage background, the system wouldn't flag his overpowered stats as a glitch. He could finally unleash his hidden abilities in public. If you solo these dungeons and build your fame, the goddesses will definitely track you down. The bluff worked flawlessly. The entire guild swallowed the backstory without a single doubt. However, processing the certification for this terrifying brute was proving difficult. The system interface kept glitching on his absurd stats. Luckily, the handsome support character deployed his ultimate charm skill. Dazzled by 𝒕💂's visual upgrade, the guild girls eagerly rushed the paperwork through. They even slipped him their numbers for an after-work coffee quest. Meanwhile, Minryu had absolutely zero female attraction. Instead, a massive mob of sweaty, muscle-obsessed male hunters completely swarmed the overpowered barbarian. They were begging him to join their raid parties, some even trying to touch his legendary pectorals. For a guy who played solo his whole life, this sudden fan club was a massive dopamine hit. He happily accepted all their party invites. With their shiny new hunter licenses equipped, the duo plunged into the 𝒕💂 dungeon beneath the city limits. But grinding the traditional way, Minryu realized one-shotting these low-level mobs one by one was completely inefficient. The spawn rate was just too damn high. So, our genius main character invented an absolute cheat tier technique. It was simple yet devastating. Just hold the blade straight up and sprint in a massive circle like an absolute maniac, like a spinning blender of doom. The descending dungeon bats literally impaled themselves on his sword, though it didn't instantly deplete their health to zero. The crippled mobs dropped to the floor, completely locked out of combat. 𝒕💂's blazing flames incinerated the last enemy. In this twisted dungeon, monsters do not just leave corpses behind. Upon death, they shatter into countless glowing orbs of pure life force. Every single drop of experience gets instantly absorbed, straight into the player who lands the final blow. This time, 𝒕💂 reaped all the rewards. But honestly, this low-tier farming ground barely moved our progress bars. You see, leveling up in this world is not just a simple numbers game. It fundamentally reshapes a living being's entire capacity to handle mana and vitality. The system demands a massive toll for ultimate power. Gaining a single level is excruciatingly hard. It feels exactly like tearing down and rebuilding your entire skeletal structure from scratch. Luckily, my body is far from human. As a supreme dragon in disguise, all that pure life essence flows directly into my dragon core. But absorbing raw energy is like playing with fire. The magical turbulence inside my veins is insanely volatile. I have to suppress and master this chaotic mana before truly making it my own. One wrong move, or absorbing too much experience at once, my physical vessel would literally detonate into bloody pieces. Even so, I could not help but smirk at our gains. Against all odds, I had managed to grind up a few levels over 15 long years. This year marked my 150th birthday. For mere mortals, that is ancient history. But for a supreme dragon with a 1,000-year lifespan, I am basically just an edgy teenager. Right now, countless other dragons are completely hard stuck at their current levels. The system's ecosystem is failing them. There simply are not enough high-ranking boss monsters left to hunt. Plus, revealing our true forms to the human world would spark a disastrous, never-ending war. The ancient elder dragons face an even harsher reality. They require astronomical amounts of life force just to grow a fraction of an inch. Yet, hiding quietly in the shadows simply is not in their arrogant nature. Their primal instincts crave absolute, undeniable power. Grinding low-level mobs for scrap experience is completely useless for their massive level requirements. So, the Ancient Ones devised a terrifying workaround to bypass the system's limits. They hoard astronomical amounts of life essence in one concentrated, fixed location. It is the ultimate solution to our race's catastrophic mana drought. In our ancient tongue, we call this sacred gathering of power, the font of life. But naive humans have a much simpler name for it, calling it a dragon lair. Meanwhile, Deep inside the volcanic crater dungeon, a colossal, nightmarish spider boss was ruthlessly slaughtering a hunter party. The two male vanguard hunters were fighting for their lives against the terrifying arachnid swarm. Their weapons barely scratched the beasts. Worse yet, their two female party members were completely immobilized, trapped helplessly inside webs tougher than enchanted steel. The demonic spiders lunged in for the bloody kill. Suddenly, a bone-chilling aura erupted across the cavern. Absolute zero temperatures instantly froze the monsters into shattered ice sculptures. 𝒕�𝒕🔪's overwhelming magic had arrived right in the nick of time. All four hunters stared in absolute awe at their savior. Seeing no other choice, our groups merged into a raid party to push toward the boss room. As we marched down the dark corridors, the grateful vanguard hunter enthusiastically pitched an invite. He desperately wanted our overpowered duo to join their official guild. Naturally, Minryu coldly rejected the offer without a second thought. But then, the two female hunters leaned in with a seductive whisper. They promised late-night drinks and intimate conversations. The hidden, overpowered main character instantly reconsidered. But a terrifying, death glare from 𝒕🂂💧 made Minryu freeze mid-sentence. He smartly swallowed his words. Do not get the wrong idea. This was not some romantic jealousy trope. It was all part of their master plan. Grinding in secret is utterly pointless if you want to build a legendary reputation. But if our guild rank suddenly skyrocketed from level 1, the system administrators would immediately flag us for cheating. Having living witnesses validates our absurd clear times perfectly. The ultimate strategy to manipulate public perception relies purely on rumors and visual proof. We just need to selectively display fractions of our overwhelming power. By teaming up with random raid parties, we control the narrative. This calculated exposure will effortlessly sculpt Minryu's public persona into a legendary hero, a flawless, untainted savior worthy of absolute worship. And more importantly for him, it skyrocketed his chances of meeting top-tier goddesses. But the golden rule of hiding your max stats remained absolute. We must limit our exposure to prevent our true dragon identities from leaking. One raid, one party, no repeat collaborations. Minryu had to admit, 𝒕🂂💧's grand strategy was flawlessly calculated. But one frustrating detail completely shattered his pride. Were all the girls in this dungeon completely blind to his godly aura? Why was nobody throwing themselves at the actual hidden, overpowered boss of the group? Grumbling under his breath, he followed the squad deeper. Finally, the suffocating heat signaled their arrival at the crater core. The terrifying domain of the final dungeon boss, a magnificent, glowing artifact core, hovered at the center of the arena. Its radiant pulse warned them that the apex predator was already hunting them from the shadows. Blinded by arrogance and overconfidence in his average stats, the blonde vanguard recklessly charged forward to solo the beast. Not wanting to lose the experience points, the heavy-set tank dashed right behind him. They initiated a head-on collision with the monstrous boss. The support girls instantly cast their defensive buffs. Perfect timing. Shimmering mana shields blocked a lethal wave of corrosive spider venom. Initially, the Vanguard duo's combo attacks flowed flawlessly. They pushed the horrific monster back with a relentless barrage of physical strikes. They did not give the creature a single second to breathe. But their foolish pride would soon cost them everything. They had charged in without scanning the dungeon's true threat level. The system's official mortality rates were a complete lie. Low-level gates always seemed perfectly safe to the public eye. Why? Because human technology lacked the scouters to measure a monster's true hidden stats. The only viable data came from the traumatized survivors, who barely dragged their broken bodies back to the guild to report the boss mechanics. Therefore, a sudden mutation or an unrecorded boss variant meant certain doom. The guild relied entirely on blood-soaked trial and error. That suicidal method only worked for common fodder mobs. Facing an unknown boss room with zero intel was basically throwing your life away. And right now, these arrogant hunters were paying the ultimate price. The blonde vanguard collapsed to his knees in utter despair. His trusted tank had seemingly been erased from existence in a split second. Now, the boss's gaping maw was charging a cataclysmic death beam aimed right at his face. A terrifying blast of raw, destructive energy violently erupted. The shockwave threatened to collapse the entire volcanic cavern. But right before annihilation, 𝒕🂂💧 sighed and finally stepped into the fray. An absolute fortress of indestructible ice materialized before them. The lethal beam dispersed harmlessly against her glacial aegis. Realizing its magic was completely nullified, the beast went berserk. It launched its razor-sharp, steel-crushing mandibles directly at 𝒕🂂💧's barrier. But before the devastating physical blow could land, Minryu finally decided to stop playing the background character. With a lazy smirk, he casually blocked the earth-shattering strike using just one hand on his blade. His hidden stats exploded outward. He hurled his weapon with apocalyptic force. A cataclysmic tornado of sword aura utterly shredded the arena. Knowing its health points had hit 0, the desperate boss triggered its self-destruct sequence. It concentrated its remaining life force into a devastating mana bomb to wipe the raid. But the blinding, earth-shaking explosion merely served as a cinematic backdrop. Minryu and 𝒕💂 stood untouched, looking like absolute legendary deities as the dust settled. The boss was effortlessly deleted. Snatching the glowing artifact core, the survivors stumbled into the extraction elevator. The ride up was ruined by the blonde vanguard's pathetic, endless sobbing. The constant weeping was driving Minryu absolutely insane. Between ugly tears, the broken hunter confessed his devastating guilt. He had pushed his skills to the absolute limit, but watching his brother-in-arms get obliterated shattered his mind. Overwhelmed by his own uselessness, the trauma completely broke his sanity. Unable to process the grief, he wildly lashed out at the only targets left. He screamed at Minryu, cursing him for holding back his godlike power while his friend died. Suddenly, the elevator doors chimed open to an impossible sight. The 3 missing party members were standing there, perfectly alive and healthy. Minryu's movement speed was so fundamentally broken that nobody even perceived the rescue. Realizing his colossal mistake, the blonde fool was immediately pummeled by his own teammates. How dare he disrespect their absolute savior? The heavyset tank quickly cleared the misunderstanding. He cried out that the legendary swordsman Flash stepped in front of him. He tanked the lethal damage using nothing but his terrifying physical defense. Hearing the absolute truth, the entire squad instantly dropped to their knees. They bowed their heads, begging the hidden master for forgiveness. 𝒕💂 stepped forward with a shockingly generous business proposal. Since her class could not equip this specific artifact, she offered it to their guild. She was perfectly willing to bypass the system's auction house entirely. She calmly stated that they would drop the price to exactly 50%. It would be a direct trade, bypassing all those agonizing guild tax regulations. The stunned hunters felt like they had just hit the jackpot of a lifetime. They frantically accepted the incredibly overpowered deal without a second thought. This was basically a cheat code for their guild's wealth. Hearing their ecstatic cheers made Minryu crack a genuine, relieved smile. Seeing the zero-casualty clear screen was always a good feeling. Deep down, he mourned passing up such an insanely high-tier weapon. But his absurd level restrictions made the gear completely unequipable anyway. The system simply would not let him wield it. But lurking in the shadows outside the gate, a mysterious carriage observed their every move. A sharply dressed man with gleaming glasses smiled like he had just drawn a super rare gacha card. He had finally tracked down our overpowered duo. Surprisingly, his aura felt completely devoid of killing intent. Stepping into the light, he dropped a massive lore bomb on them. He casually mentioned his deep connection to 𝒕💂's legendary older sister, Adora, the very same hero who had clashed against the apocalyptic Black Dragon. 10 years ago, the 4 legendary heroes forged a dragon-slaying syndicate, hunting down apex predators. If she had survived, the goddess's blessing would surely be hers. Suddenly, the carriage screeched to a halt. The guide claimed this was the syndicate's secret hideout, but the doors swung open. To reveal 𝒕💂's own front yard, Minryu had completely hijacked the ride, knocking out the driver and steering them straight home. The Four Eyes was completely clueless. Now, panic set in as he begged for his pathetic life, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The duo's attention shifted. A pure light aura radiated from the stranger's hidden badge. The system window did not lie. This guy was a high-ranking priest from the Sanctuary of Light. Identity verified. 𝒕💂 instantly sliced the ropes, offering a smooth apology for the rough welcome. The priest accepted the apology, but glared daggers at the barbarian in the room. I could not even cast a single word before that brute blitzed me with a max stat combo. Zero hesitation, just pure, unfiltered violence. Brushing off the dust, the priest triggered a hidden quest. The sanctuary needed 𝒕💂's OP skills to investigate a shadow figure. The target's name? Alito, a ghost lurking in the refugee zones around the Crater Valley dungeon. 𝒕💂's intel network had already flagged this non-player character, Whispers said. He was running a massive dark guild, using the slums as a human shield. These refugees were exiled citizens, cast out from the safe zones, left to rot in the wastelands. The Crater dungeon's spawn rate had ruined everything. paired with predatory guild taxes. They were forced into the monster zones. My holy faction has restricted territory access, the priest explained. We need a freelance hunter to bypass the system limits. The quest reward? Massive contribution points. Enough to guarantee your audience with the goddess herself. The stakes were astronomical. Only a max-level dragon hunter could pull this off. The mission constraints? Solo infiltration. 𝒕💂 had to breach the enemy's core alone. Think of it as a stealth raid. We will provide the cheat codes for the entrance exam. Minryu slammed his fist down. Solo raiding a boss lair is pure suicide. Are you insane? But Minryu's massive tank build made stealth impossible. He would pull aggro from the whole map. 𝒕💂 smirked. This was the ultimate grind to help his bro, to finally meet the goddess. Ignoring the tank's warnings, 𝒕💂 locked in his choice. Quest accepted. The priest handed over the forged player ID. But as 𝒕💂 scanned the stats, his jaw dropped. The character profile listed his gender as female. Is the system glitching? The priest adjusted his glasses. It is not a bug. It is a feature. Meanwhile, deep within the monster-infested woods, the Dragon's Nest faction was hosting a brutal survival draft. Player versus player matches fired off back-to-back. Only the top tier would survive. The guild benefits were supposedly legendary. The system called up player 59, stepping into the arena. A stunningly beautiful girl, claiming the mage class. Her name? Ariana. Plot twist. It was 𝒕💂, rocking a flawless max charisma disguise, following the priest's absolute stealth strategy. His primary objective? Scan the territory. Verify if this dragon's nest was the real deal. Phase 1. Crush the entrance exam. He prepped for a brutal boss fight, but the system threw a curveball. Auto pass. The guild's mage slots were completely empty, flooded entirely by melee grunts. But wait, the blind female assistant flared her aura. Her suspicion stats were maxed out, drawing her blade. She rushed in for a lethal combat check. Right as their hitboxes collided, a massive unit crashed the party. The shockwave blasted them both back. A localized earthquake. It was Polly, the gluttonous raid boss, sick of low-tier mob meat. He was craving player flesh. His grotesque eyes locked onto the two surviving girls. The fact they dodged his area of effect attack enraged him. He charged like a runaway freight train. Boom! The examiner casually stepped in, one-shotting the massive beast with a single devastating punch. Unbelievable. This scrawny unit packed monstrous damage. A blood-red aura radiated from his fist. That was not just basic mana. It was pure, condensed death energy. A legendary skill that required 40 years of hellish grinding. Most players would never unlock it. Seeing the raid boss bleeding out, Ariana instantly shifted to healer mode, casting high-tier recovery magic to stabilize his health points. She triggered a dialogue option, demanding they transport him to the main base for full healing. 3 hours of grueling travel later, they breached the true lair, deep inside a volcanic crater. The glutton's weight stat was absolutely broken. Even their dragon mount's stamina bar was completely drained. Meanwhile, Ariana ran a tactical scan of the environment. Natural cavern textures, but laced with high-tech man-made machinery. This was not a biological habitat. It was a factory. A true dragon's domain, pulsed with infinite life force. Here, the monoradar was dead silent. As she moved to investigate, the blind assassin blocked her path. A quiet nod of thanks for the save against the glutton. Keep your guard up, she whispered. That examiner? His stats are masking his true class. He is the head of security for this entire raid zone. Righteous players do not survive here. To the outside world, this place looked like a premium safe zone, a luxury stronghold. The reality? A hellish survival map stripped of basic drops. No food, no water, no space. Dubbed the Dragon's Nest simply because it was an inescapable island, where the Guildmaster's law was absolute. Suddenly, the examiner spawned an event trigger, an audience with the final boss, Alexander. The condition? Unequip all items. Stash the magic wands and legendary gear. En route to the boss room, the escort dropped a lore bomb. He was a double agent planted by the system. The reason for the disarmament? Pure formalities. Alexander never equips weapons in his throne room. Plus, my aura stats are maxed. I can tank anything. You are safe. Or so he thought. The instant the heavy doors creaked open. Zap! Alexander blitzed him, driving a simple pen infused with legendary lightning magic straight through his chest. Instant kill. The boss knew about the spies all along. It was a server-wide purge of all hidden rats. The shockwave blasted Ariana backward. Disarmed and without her mana stone. Her defense stats plummeted to 0. This entire sequence had been perfectly scripted by Alexander. Lacking the passive skill to detect dragon cores, he baited a suspected dragon into his trap, using Ariana as a human radar. His raid strategy was brutally simple. Push her health points to 1%, force her ultimate transformation. Bursting with overwhelming boss energy, Alexander completely overpowered her hitboxes, pinning her down effortlessly, right as the fatal execution strike charged up. Beep! An emergency system alert shattered the tension. The blind assassin burst into the room, screaming that a massive dragon had breached the western perimeter. A perfect aggro pull, snatching Ariana from the jaws of death. Alexander's eyes narrowed. Convinced she was just a trash mob, he dumped her aggro onto the blind girl and teleported away. Alone at last, the assassin dropped her act. Name is 𝒕💂💕🔥. She had scanned Ariana's hidden class from day one. The rescue was totally calculated. To block Alexander's wicked wipe mechanic, 𝒕💂💕🔥 then summoned her hidden party member, a captured dragon named Pizza. Trapped in this hellish dungeon, Pizza was the one who triggered the decoy alert, pulling the final boss away just in time. Ariana's eyes widened. The quest pieces finally clicked. This was the exact legendary beast Minryu had mentioned. The ultimate hidden ally. He was genuinely thankful for the system concealing his true identity. But right now, Minryu faced a completely unexpected, catastrophic crisis. How on earth was he supposed to flush his business down a broken toilet? 3 excruciating days had passed since 𝒕💂💕💥 left on her mission. The house had descended into absolute chaos. Water usage required a level 8 system clearance. Even grabbing a snack meant literally smashing the refrigerator door off its hinges. Minryu felt like a caveman trapped in a modern dungeon. Desperate for gold, our overpowered main character accepted the most random quests. Today's mission? Track down a rogue thief. The only clue? A single strand of hair left at the crime scene. But with his absolute game system, tracking was a breeze. The coordinates led straight to a monster-infested cavern. Deep within the shadows, he finally spotted his target. A priest of the light. Yet, the holy man was currently pinned down by vicious beasts. Before Minryu could even blink, a massive monster lunged at him from the dark. And it wasn't alone. A whole swarm ambushed him with terrifying, synchronized combat tactics. A heavy blow launched our hero 18,000 miles away. But did it leave a scratch? Not a chance. Against Minryu's maxed-out physical stats, it was barely a breeze. With just one casual swing of his blade, he cleaved the entire horde in half. Instant annihilation. Still trembling, the rescued priest gasped out a horrifying truth. 𝒕💂💕💥's cover was blown. Her fate was completely unknown. Minryu's eyes darkened instantly, demanding the priest lead him to the dragon's lair. Meanwhile, deep within an underground research facility, Alexander was conducting forbidden experiments. He was extracting the life force from living, breathing monsters. His twisted goal? Channeling all that raw energy straight into a dragon core. But his makeshift system was highly unstable. It forcefully mutated the test subjects, making them violently overpowered and ready to snap. Yet, Alexander just smirked. His own monstrous strength kept them perfectly in check. With absolute arrogance, he ordered the mutations to continue. The failures were dragged down into the deepest abyss of the dungeon, while this nightmare unfolded below. 𝒕💂💕💥 and Eliza were infiltrating the dragon's lair, sweeping every shadow. After gathering the intel, the puzzle pieces clicked. 𝒕💂💕💥 realized exactly why Alexander's system was failing. The missing key was Pizza's unique dragon core. "Didn't you say your life force hit its absolute limit during your first escape?" she asked. The truth was finally exposed. Pizza's core was incomplete. Though it radiated immense vitality, it was the exact reason the lair's defenses were crumbling. But hope wasn't completely lost. There was a hidden method to forge the perfect dragon core without sacrificing Pizza's life. The secret lay within the life synthesis chamber, hidden dead center in the underground labyrinth. We are going straight down to absorb that pure energy. Suddenly, a massive earthquake shattered the silence. The ground violently ripped apart. The failed mutant experiments had breached the laboratory. A terrifying roar echoed as the beasts broke free. Their mutated hides completely brushed off 𝒕💂💕💥's lethal strikes. Even Pizza unleashed her devastating mana flames. But the fiery inferno barely tickled the beast. With 0 options left, Pizza tightly locked her claws around the monster. She shot straight into the sky toward the sanctuary's dome. 𝒕💂💕💥 gasped, realizing Pizza intended to use the lair's holy barrier to vaporize the beast. But this drastic move completely threatened Alexander's grand design. The villain stepped out of the shadows, radiating killing intent. He locked his sights on the dragon. His aura was overwhelmingly oppressive, even with 𝒕💂 and Eliza unleashing a perfectly synced barrage of ultimate skills. Their blades could not pierce his absolute defense. They were merely buying desperate seconds for Pizza to escape. But the gap in stats was far too massive. Alexander easily bypassed their vanguard and reached out for the dragon. Boom! Talk about perfect timing. Like a falling meteor, our hidden, overpowered protagonist crashed into the scene. Minryu savagely stomped Alexander into the earth with the force of a nuclear bomb. Dust cleared to reveal 𝒕💂 in her cute new avatar. Minryu's heart soared seeing her safe. But then, blazing rage ignited in his eyes. You dare lay a finger on my girl? He channeled his max stats into a devastating right hook. He smashed the villain's trash-talking mouth, sending him rocketing through a solid mountain. The sheer shockwave could have instantly pulverized a level 40 boss. But the battle was far from over. A sickeningly powerful aura pulsed from the rubble. 𝒕💂's blood ran cold. It's a regeneration skill. The bastard had siphoned life force to heal himself. Alexander emerged from the dust without a single scratch. He immediately uncapped his limiter, wrapping his body in furious crackling lightning. He transformed into a living thunderbolt, moving at godlike speeds. 𝒕💂's eyes couldn't even track his afterimages. Floating midair, Alexander dropped a massive truth bomb. He was also an awakened reincarnator from Earth. He unleashed a terrifying storm of lightning strikes, a barrage meant to shred Minryu into 100 bloody pieces. Yet, with merely a flick of his blade, our main character parried the god-tier assault. But just as Minryu moved in for the final kill, "Stop!" 𝒕💂 screamed, blocking his path. Alexander was linked directly to the lair's mainframe. He was leeching life force from every connected soul to fuel his immortality. Striking him down now would drain the hostages entirely, killing them all. To beat this cheat code, they had to sever the lifelink first. 𝒕💂 formulated an instant raid plan. She would dive into the lab to destroy the core connection. Minryu's job? Keep this overpowered maniac busy and firmly rooted in place. Realizing he held the ultimate hostage advantage, Alexander smirked with wicked arrogance. He claimed he knew exactly how to defeat a broken hacker like Minryu. The strategy? Endless attrition. As Minryu brought his massive sword crashing down, the villain constantly funneled stolen life force to weather the storm. He planned to bleed out Minryu's stamina until our hero collapsed. Meanwhile, in the pitch-black depths below, the girls were in deep trouble. A grotesque chimera mutant blocked their path to the core. Its stats were incredibly overwhelming. Pinned down by its savage onslaught, their HP bars quickly dropped into the red zone. Just as despair set in, 𝒕💂 arrived like a guardian angel to suppress the nightmarish beast. Back on the surface, the sky rained apocalyptic lightning. Alexander relentlessly spammed his absolute thunder skills. But against a level 1 anomaly with maxed out stats, it was utterly pointless. Minryu shattered the lightning spears single-handedly. He looked bored enough to break 1,000 more without breaking a sweat. With an icy smirk, our hero bragged about his hidden trump card. A legendary level 27 dragon. Hearing this, Alexander burst into a sinister, mocking laughter. Your precious ally is probably a corpse by now, he gloated. She can't even transform into her dragon state, because I hold the absolute suppression artifact right here in my... The villain paused, frantically patting his pockets. The artifact was completely gone. The sneaky Eliza had effortlessly pickpocketed it earlier. Freed from her chains, 𝒕💂's true draconic aura violently erupted. With 𝒕💂 clashing fiercely against the mutant boss, an opening finally appeared. Eliza and Pizza sprinted straight to the central mainframe. Without a second of hesitation, Eliza brought her blade down on the energy link. She violently severed the glowing cables, totally ignoring the blinding, catastrophic explosion that followed. Rewind exactly 1 minute ago. Alexander was desperately trying to hunt 𝒕💂 down. Terrified that her awakening would obliterate his lab, he sprinted like a madman. But the overpowered Minryu was right on his tail, completely blocking his path. Cornered like a rat, the villain dropped a shocking lore bomb. A transcendent cosmic force was seeking bloody vengeance for the bone demon Minryu had slaughtered. The evil god Omplus? Minryu guessed casually. Alexander scoffed. The mastermind pulling the strings was an entity far more terrifying. An absolute ruler of the shadows. Annoyed by these dramatic, vague cliffhangers, Minryu's patience snapped. He delivered a brutal, merciless kick, completely snapping the villain's shins in half. Alexander's agonizing screams echoed through the abyss. At this critical moment, the cornered villain had completely exhausted his natural regeneration. But he still had one final, desperate trump card to play. He injected himself with an experimental serum known as the artificial system. Instantly, his flesh mutated as a violent, blinding blue aura erupted around him. Our main character's eyes widened. He recognized this dimensional energy. It felt exactly like the force that ripped him from Earth. The violent transformation was absolute chaos, crumbling his physical body to dust before reconstructing him into a grotesque, nightmare-tier monstrosity. Glancing at his system interface, a blood-red warning flashed. Glitched entity. Level 72. His agility stats had completely broken the game's limits, allowing him to teleport directly behind our overpowered hero in a literal blink. Meanwhile, down in the lower depths, Elyxi had barely survived, severing the cursed lifelink between the system and her companion. But in that brief moment of exhausted vulnerability, the traitorous headmaid seized her chance, and mercilessly plunged a cold blade straight through Elyxi's back. Stepping over her fallen body, the madwoman charged at the energy core, sacrificing her own flesh to act as a bridge. Forcibly reconnecting the corrupted system, she mutated into a living node. Overloaded with hijacked mana, the massive machine detonated. Yet, its surviving core ruthlessly continued to drain the life force of every weakened player nearby. Witnessing this absolute nightmare, the majestic dragon, Savina unleashed a desperate charge to shatter the core. But the system's defensive barrier was now too overpowered. The violent energy backlash blasted her away, leaving her in agonizing pain. The entire raid party was completely shattered, their stamina hitting rock bottom. With zero combat capability remaining, the brave blue dragon named Pizza refused to surrender. Pushing past her limits, she unleashed a devastating inferno breath, desperate to incinerate the corrupted core. But no matter how much willpower she poured into the flames, the absolute power difference was insurmountable. The recoil shattered her defenses, leaving her coughing up blood. Elyxi dragged her battered body over to comfort her. But wait, there was one last strategy to save. This doomed raid, she forcefully channeled her remaining mana into the villain's dropped gear, triggering a system loophole that forced the dragon into a human polymorph. At the exact same moment, high above the battlefield, the glitched boss was desperately regenerating his flesh after surviving a storm of sword strikes from our main character. Minryu's eyes burned with cold fury. Go ahead and regenerate 100 times. I will just slaughter you into 1,000 pieces. His physical damage was healing, but the phantom pain of 1,000 relentless cuts was driving the monster absolutely insane. Unable to endure the torture, he activated legendary tier draconic scales for absolute defense. But against our max-level hero, completely useless. The endless barrage of lethal strikes pushed the boss to the brink of a system crash. Suddenly, his corrupted sensors flared as he felt a massive surge of mana threatening his precious energy core down below. Against all odds, the desperate polymorph was a success. The mighty blue dragon had fully transformed into an incredibly adorable, level 5 human girl. Her ultimate quest? Deliver the final strike to shatter the core using Elyxi's holy blade. But there was one massive system penalty to this sudden class change. Her agility stats were reset to 0, forcing her to learn how to walk on 2 human legs. Amazingly, in mere minutes, she found her perfect balance, leaving Savina completely speechless at her insane growth rate. Boom! The ceiling caved in. Our main character and the glitched boss plummeted from the sky in a terrifying shower of boulders. The earth-shattering shockwave sent the little dragon girl into a total panic. Adrenaline completely bypassed her system penalty. Without any tutorials, she sprinted away like a lightning bolt, screaming her lungs out. Yet, she still needed our overpowered hero to dash in and snatch her from the devastating avalanche of rubble. Are you kidding me? It took forever to get near the boss's core, and you ruined it. She wailed in absolute fury. She even started nagging him for beating her up and looting her gold back in the beginner zone. Our ruthless main character simply lifted her by the head like a noisy kitten, shutting down her tantrum instantly. Savina quickly briefed him on the raid mechanics, desperately begging him to hold the absolute aggro, just long enough for the little girl to land the critical hit on the core. Meanwhile, the glitched boss's hit points hit critical levels. The corrupted system instantly triggered an emergency phase shift, demanding an immense sacrifice of mana. He dove straight toward the core to feast, but our main character intercepted him like an unbreakable iron wall, blasting him backward. Without missing a single beat, our hero launched a devastating ceiling strike, aiming to lock down his stats exactly like a previous boss encounter. But the glitched entity countered. Its corrupted flesh mutated, splitting apart like a terrifying symbiote. Now, a nightmare storm of corrupted tentacles erupted from his body, creating an area of effect attack impossible to perfectly parry. The deadly strikes rained down on the little dragon girl below, but her evasion stats were unexpectedly maxed out. Weaving through the barrage of death with terrifying grace, she closed the distance to the target. At the exact same second, our main character shattered the boss's defense and unleashed an ultimate, absolute critical strike. Boom! Down below, the holy blade successfully pierced the system core. The boss's infinite regeneration was permanently disabled. A catastrophic explosion erupted, obliterating the entire volcanic dungeon. As heavy rain washed over the ruins, the Holy Vanguard finally arrived to secure the raid zone. It was a flawless, miraculous dungeon clear against all odds. The corrupted laboratory was wiped from existence. The low-level non-player characters slowly regained consciousness, their stolen life force finally returning to their bodies. Only 36 casualties were recorded, and every single one was a grotesque biological weapon forged by the mad scientist. But the true, heart-wrenching tragedy of this raid was the loss of 𝒕𝒂𝒕🔂. The endless downpour felt like the heavens weeping, yet it couldn't drown out the absolute despair in the little dragon's cries. Fast forward 3 days. Deep within the sanctuary of the Holy Order, a high priest issued a strict gag order to 𝒕💂💂 and our hero. The official guild report would publicly blame the disaster on an unknown magical anomaly. Because of this massive cover-up, public achievement points were locked. But fear not, the priest whispered. The hidden quest rewards we offer you will be absolutely legendary. 𝒕💂💂 nodded quietly. Exposing the involvement of the Earthling faction and other Dimension Walkers would trigger a server-wide panic. With a solemn expression, the priest guided the legendary duo into a heavily guarded secret vault. Here, the dark lore of the goddess assassination from 20 years ago was revealed. Out of all the captured traitors, only 30% were actual players. The other 70% were corrupted native aristocrats. To cover their tracks, these nobles launched a holy crusade, slaughtering innocent Dimension Walkers under the guise of demon hunting. By the time the Holy Order realized this massive system error, the damage was done. They fought desperately to stop the baseless executions. But 2 decades simply wasn't enough time to patch the deep-rooted prejudice against players from another world. And right there, trapped in a cold iron cell, sat the little dragon girl. Her system timer showed 10 days until a rigged trial, followed by immediate banishment to a brutal death camp. If the tribunal discovered her true bloodline, she would be executed as an agent of the demon god. The region's absolute laws were unbreakable. 𝒕💂💂's heart broke as she made a desperate vow to shatter this twisted fate and break the little girl out. Visiting hours are over. A heavily armored guard barked, cutting their time short. But right on cue, our overpowered main character activated his masterclass acting skills. Feigning a brutal phantom injury from the boss raid, he conveniently stumbled and completely obliterated the cell's reinforced door. Catching on instantly, the priest yelled, "Emergency! The legendary hero is suffering a catastrophic mana deviation. Medics, clear the area immediately." Thanks to this flawless diversion, the 2 dragons secured precious time to strategize. The little girl's eyes sparkled with tears of pure gratitude. They were practically strangers, yet they were risking everything for her. "Don't worry about me," she smiled bravely. "I am much tougher than my level shows. My time with my sister was painfully short, but those memories, they are my greatest treasure." Meanwhile, outside the maximum security zone, our main character and the priest were finalizing a master-tier exploit. The priest revealed a hidden questline to save the girl. Our hero must willingly take on her criminal status, generating massive negative karma. Then, instantly clear his name. With their massive reservoir of unspent achievement points, it was perfectly balanced. Just one more hidden dungeon clear, and their ultimate prison break would be complete. Minryu finally saw the truth. The Order of Light was just another corrupt guild farming players. But a monster hunting quest? That was exactly the kind of daily grind he lived for. Normally, a high-level mage would carry the party in a raid like this. But the system had locked them out. They were completely on their own, desperately needing a new support class to survive. Their target? An abandoned, cursed villa owned by a bankrupt noble family. The locals called it a haunted house, a simple ghost-clearing quest, or so the mission prompt claimed. However, the terrifying truth was entirely different. This place was a hidden dungeon, a secret biological lab run by the Great Earth faction. To protect their dark, world-shattering secrets, they rigged the zone. Lethal traps were hidden in every shadow, arranged with the twisted perfection of a demonic artist. The sadistic trapmaker only had one regret. These magnificent pieces of deadly art would never be truly appreciated, because no player could ever survive witnessing them. Direct player-versus-player combat wasn't their style at all. For an artist of death, pure panic was the ultimate canvas. Absolute terror was the masterpiece that made their heart race. They thrived on the sweet scent of human fear. 2 days later, the trio finally arrived at the iron gates of the cursed mansion. This was their pardon mission, a chance to wipe their penalty status. Before breaching the zone, 𝒕�𝒕🔪 explained that having a magic caster would grant massive buffs against astral enemies. Mages possessed the absolute counter-skills against antimatter wraiths, but since their party lacked one, they had to clear the mobs manually. 𝒕🔪 suddenly pitched a genius strategy. "Let us split the party to farm faster." Minryu practically choked on his laughter. That was literally the dumbest horror movie trope ever. The solo player always gets one shot first, especially when the boss mechanic forbids eye contact. Just as he explained the survival rules, 𝒕🔪 executed a flawless jump scare. Minryu shrieked like a terrified novice. Who would have guessed? This brutally overpowered warrior was actually dead scared of ghosts. While Minryu and 𝒕🔪 bickered like low-level noobs, 𝒕🂂🔪 completely ignored their nonsense. She formulated her own solo raid plan. She would take the left wing, leaving the haunted sector to those two idiots. Meanwhile, deep inside the dark corridors, a spine-chilling, ghostly melody echoed through the shadows. But it was just coming from 𝒕🔪's portable Bluetooth speaker. Minryu's annoyance meter was maxing out. She claimed the background music granted a massive morale buff. Plus, she was a veteran at farming these mobs. The loud noise was actually a perfect crowd control tactic to intimidate them. Even though these creatures were just low-tier, HP-leeching parasitic mobs, their agility stats were insanely high, making them an absolute nightmare to hit. They usually spawn near rotting monster corpses or damp zones, especially during the summer event. If they had just farmed some holy water from the Order of Light, this purification raid would be a breeze. Hearing this, Minryu's mind suddenly flashed back to his past life on Earth. Back then, bug spray and rat poison were the ultimate mob-clearing items, basically a chemical version of holy water. But while they were casually exchanging lore, they completely missed the catastrophic danger. A massive, high-level phantom had spawned right behind them. By the time Minryu sensed its chilling aura, his body locked up in absolute, paralyzing fear. The monstrous entity grinned maliciously at his reaction. Its aggro trap had worked perfectly. These foolish human players had walked right into the kill zone it had painstakingly crafted. But the system failed to calculate one crucial detail. Minryu's base stats were completely broken. Driven by pure, unfiltered terror, he blasted forward like a legendary cannonball. He obliterated every single high-tier trap with sheer brute force, leaving the mastermind ghost utterly dumbfounded. 𝒕🔪 sprinted after him in a panic. She found Minryu frozen before a barricaded window. Snapping out of his panic debuff, he shattered the wooden planks and vaulted inside. But the system notification flashed red. The horrifying truth revealed itself. They had stepped into a spatial infinite loop, a high-tier magic labyrinth with 0 exit points. However, the ghost severely underestimated 𝒕🔪's psychic specs. Her telepathy easily pinpointed the dungeon's hidden escape portal. Meanwhile, Minryu simply bypassed the puzzle mechanics by punching a hole straight through the reinforced wall. The ghost and 𝒕🔪 screamed foul play. This guy was basically using wall hacks. Effortlessly, they cleared the early stages. By the third zone, 𝒕🔪 and the ghost actually teamed up, triggering hidden floor traps just to test Minryu's evasion stats. Not backing down, the overpowered main character invited the ghost to a temporary party. Together, they dropped 𝒕🔪 straight into a crocodile pit, making the poor girl scream for her life. At the final boss room, the ghost was having so much fun, she completely forgot her aggro settings and helped them slay the giant serpent. She totally abandoned her duty as a dungeon guardian. Meanwhile, in a completely different sector, 𝒕🂂🔪 had cracked a hidden vault. She uncovered classified data logs abandoned by the previous guildmaster. Despite the corrupted files, she decoded a world-shattering conspiracy. The truth hit her like a physical blow. She immediately sprinted back to her party, initiating an emergency extraction protocol. Back in the cleared room, the ghost was dumping her tragic character lore. 𝒕🔥 was practically in tears from the emotional cutscene. The spirit revealed how the Napoli faction saved her avatar from starving to death. She had nothing. But they needed her utility skills. She did not care if they were corrupt PKers or murderers. But suddenly, the ghost snapped back to reality. What on earth was this cozy campfire vibe? Did these humans forget she was a terrifying boss monster? Seeing their relaxed, zero aggro expressions, the ghost's fury meter maxed out. She went totally berserk, unsheathing her razor-sharp astral claws in a flash of deadly light. She threatened to instantly one-shot Minryu if he dared to smirk again. But the hidden, overpowered warrior just stared at her, radiating an impossibly calm aura. He casually extended a permanent party invite. Join his guild, and she would never have to solo queue again. He saw right through her code. She was a monster now, but her soul used to be human. She was terrified of the dark, just wanting her hard work to be acknowledged. He revealed the game changer. She could suppress her murderous debuffs simply by syncing with the artificial system. Unlike those great Earth scumbags who treated NPC lives like disposable trash, they viewed human lives as mere bugs in the Matrix. It is not too late to log out of this nightmare. Come with us. His words shattered her mental barriers, unlocking a flood of suppressed memories. Suddenly, her astral avatar turned pitch black. The entire dungeon instance began to violently glitch and collapse. The floor shattered into digital fragments. 𝒕💂 burst into the room at the exact perfect frame. She screamed at them to evacuate. A forbidden lockdown array had been triggered. The spatial coordinates were completely sealed. If they could not locate the dungeon core to shut it down, their avatars would be permanently deleted in this void. Minryu was utterly baffled. He had speed-run through almost every zone, yet he hadn't detected a single hidden artifact. 𝒕💂 frantically exposed the illusion magic. They had just been teleporting in an infinite loop between the exact same two rooms. Now that the spatial link was broken, they had to secure the core immediately. While the party was locked in a chaotic panic, 𝒕💐's maxed-out perception stats caught the anomaly. The truth hit her like a lightning bolt. This sobbing ghost girl right in front of them was the dungeon core itself. The phantom glitched out, unleashing a corrupted maniacal laugh. She mocked the foolish hunters, declaring her HP bar was invincible. Instantly, she cast a catastrophic, area of effect earth-shatter spell right at the party. Minryu reacted with godlike agility. He grabbed his two guildmates and hurled them out of the blast radius. Standing his ground, he tanked the devastating ultimate attack head-on. Watching this heroic sacrifice, 𝒕💐's heart plummeted in sheer panic. But 𝒕💂 remained completely ice-cold. Do not waste your tears on him. His base defense stats are practically infinite. That attack will not even chip his armor. Our only objective right now is to find the exit portal. However, 𝒕💐's emotional debuff blinded her logic. Refusing to listen, she dashed straight into the hazard zone to check Minryu's HP status. But as she closed the distance, a chilling, killing intent flared. Minryu's legendary blade was swinging straight for her neck. The lethal strike was packed with terrifying power, triggering a massive shockwave explosion. 𝒕💂 blitzed forward like lightning, snatching 𝒕💐 from the jaws of death with only a microsecond to spare. It was all thanks to the epic tier artifact that Minryu had previously crafted for her, granting her that insane, God-speed evasion. 𝒕💐 stared in sheer horror as the puzzle pieces connected. Minryu's system had been hacked. He was possessed because his 4 internal energy cores were still at level 1. He lacked the mental resistance stats. And this was no ordinary ghost raid. It was a catastrophic, top-tier biological weapon experiment. That monstrous entity had successfully bypassed his firewall, completely hijacking the mind of the most overpowered main character. If this possession skill succeeded, the system would hand over full control of Minryu's maxed-out physical avatar. 𝒕💐 panicked, screaming at the spectral witch to stop, desperately offering a quest to free her from this dungeon. But the phantom only let out a chilling, demonic laugh. She surged forward with deadly intent. I am done trusting the lies of you pathetic low-level NPCs, she roared. If you want to survive this boss room, you will have to kill me and your precious main character. But before she could finish her villainous monologue, bam! A devastating punch smashed right into her face. Defying all system logic, Minryu had forcibly reclaimed his physical controls, ruthlessly punching his own body to snap out of the mind control. Coughing up a mouthful of blood, he, somehow, gave his party members a shaky thumbs up. I am fine, he signaled, though collapsing completely motionless to the floor told a very different story. The girls watched in absolute terror. Even with his ridiculously maxed-out physical stats suppressing the dark magic, his HP was clearly hitting the red zone. He could not hold this stance for much longer. The scene violently shifted to his internal mental domain, the library of memories. Inside this spiritual battleground, Minryu was taking massive phantom damage, getting blasted hundreds of meters away by sheer kinetic force. The hidden overpowered protagonist and the vengeful spirit were locked in a legendary clash of souls. Their weapons, their own shared memories. The witch relentlessly spammed her psychic attacks, bombarding Minryu with his own traumatic past to inflict critical mental damage. Every hit was pure agony. She weaponized the dark, soul-crushing isolation of his hidden tutorial phase. 22 long years of solitary, hellish training on that mountain, all compressed into a storm of devastating psychological strikes. But our hidden hero had a counterattack ready. The witch had her own embarrassing debuffs. Minryu ruthlessly accessed her pathetic memories to strike back. Like how her eternal loneliness made her hallucinate a fake boyfriend, writing desperately cringeworthy love letters to absolutely nobody. And it did not stop there. He unleashed her ultra-embarrassing, super-weird fanfiction about the 4 legendary heroes. It was a brutal exchange of emotional damage. The two of them engaged in an endless, devastating mental deathmatch, tearing each other's pride apart. The sheer power of their internal war was so absolute, shockwaves of aura literally exploded into the physical world. Pizza watched in absolute dread, totally helpless. Meanwhile, Sevilla frantically rushed to craft an extraction artifact to save their overpowered carry. She recalled an ancient blueprint forged by players from Earth, but there was one massive system error blocking her path. Outlander magic was heavily assisted by the game system itself, leaving the true fundamental code of this spell completely unreadable to her. Could they hack the system in time? That is a wrap for today's epic raid, players. This is Bear signing off. Smash that like button, share the video, and max out our motivation stats so we can bring you more legendary action-packed recaps.